Enhancement Shaman has undergone a semi-rework in Midnight. Both hero trees have maintained their themes from War Within, but with a more streamlined rotation. I will cover most concepts of Stormbringer and Totemic in depth in this video. As this is the beginning of the expansion, I will start by going over the enhanced basics. The Enhancement Shaman resource is a buff called Maelstrom Weapon, stacking up to 10. Every ability you have gives you a random amount of Maelstrom Weapon. When you have at least 5 Maelstrom Weapon, you can use it to instantly cast a lightning spell. The spell will consume up to 10 Maelstrom for more damage. So the rotation is a cycle of building and spending. You have no explicit filler as Enhancement Shaman, your builders are all short cooldown abilities. Crash Lightning is now your top priority builder on AoE and single target. It grants you an overlapping buff that increases the damage and generation of your other builders in the subsequent 12 seconds. Storm Strike is a single target builder that gains AoE value from the previously mentioned buff. It can chain proc off of itself, so one Storm Strike could fill your Maelstrom bar if you are lucky. Lava Lash is a less powerful builder. In Totemic, it gains a lot of value during the Hot Hands buff, but outside of it, it is a weak spell in both specs. Its main purpose is that it refreshes and spreads Flame Shocks, which are also not too relevant anymore. And that is because Voltaic Blaze is now a baseline spell that replaces Flame Shock and applies Flame Shock in AoE. If you take the follow-up talent Fire Nova, Voltaic Blaze will generate 3 Maelstrom and do some extra damage. Now we will use these abilities to build Maelstrom, and after building Maelstrom, we will then spend it. Spending is very simple. If we are fighting one target, we spend on Lightning Bolt. If we are fighting 2 or more targets, we spend on Chain Lightning. There is a new secondary effect of spending, which is that it reduces the cooldown of Storm Strike and Lava Lash. And there are 2 other spenders that aren't always available. Tempest is a Stormbringer only spender that is just an empowered version of other spenders, and Primordial Storm is a single use spender after each Sundering. The priorities of builders and spenders is different between hero trees, so I will go over that in the next parts of the video. Something that is new to all specs in Midnight is the Apex talent. The Apex talent for Enhance is just a proc that refunds you a charge of Crash Lightning. This Apex is why Crash Lightning is so strong now. Rank 2 and Rank 3 are just passive increases, so you can kind of ignore them. And here is a slide on the Season 1 tier set. I won't talk about it because it is entirely passive. So I will start off with a Stormbringer guide. I think Stormbringer is the simpler hero talent and its focus is on spending as much as possible. Here is a basic tree for Stormbringer that is usable in M+ and Raid. Tempest is the main spell in Stormbringer. It is a fully random proc that you get when you spend Maelstrom or when you press Storm Strike. There are no longer any kinds of buffs or hooks linked to Tempest. Rolling Thunder has been removed. Tempest is now just a spender that is both a single target and AoE nuke. We no longer have any kind of weak aura requirement to track Tempest as well, and there's also very little reason to save Tempests or stack up Tempests. You can simply use Tempest as empowered spenders as you get them. Now this is what our priority list looks like as Stormbringer. It is very simple. Your priority is to spend Maelstrom. We aim to spend at 10 because of a new talent, Lightning Strikes, that gives you a benefit only when you spend at 10. If you have less than 10 Maelstrom, you will build with Crash Lightning, and if you have no charges of Crash Lightning, you will press Storm Strike. If you have no charge of Storm Strike, press Voltaic Blaze and Lava Lash is bottom priority. If we have run out of every button and we are still not at 10 Maelstrom, then we can spend at 5. If you do not even have 5 Maelstrom, then you should just not press anything and wait for something to come up. So this is the rotation outside of cooldowns, but Stormbringer has 2 different cooldown windows. The major cooldown of Stormbringer is Ascendance, which replaces Doom Winds and carries its benefits. During Ascendance, you generate extra Maelstrom every second, your attacks proc more Wind Fury weapons, which also generates more Maelstrom, and you also pulse AoE damage around you. Your Storm Strike is replaced with Wind Strike, which is a ranged attack that essentially has no cooldown. But the main power aspect of Ascendance is something called Thorems, which causes every Storm Strike and Crash Lightning to automatically spend your Maelstrom, and give every benefit of spending. Because of this, there are only 2 buttons worth pressing in Ascendance. If Crash Lightning is off cooldown or you get an Apex proc, you should press Crash Lightning. Otherwise, press Wind Strike. Do not manually spend or press any other button. So your opener would look like this. As you walk into the pack or boss, use Voltaic Blaze to put up Flame Shocks, use Crash Lightning to get it on cooldown, then press Ascendance, and then spam Wind Strike. If Crash Lightning procs, press it instead of Wind Strike. And the second kind of cooldown window you can get is a Doom Winds proc. This is a random proc that happens when you spend Maelstrom. Because Doom Winds has Thorems attached to it now, this is basically a mini Ascendance proc. If you played Enhanced before, this is essentially what deeply rooted elements used to be. So when Doom Winds procs, you should perform the Ascendance rotation, where you press exclusively Crash Lightning and Storm Strike and do not spend. The one issue is that because we don't have Wind Strike in this proc, we can run out of Storm Strikes. If you have no Storm Strike or Crash Lightning, then you should spend to activate Elemental Tempo, which would get you back a Storm Strike. If you don't have 5 Maelstrom and have no Storm Strikes, then just build with your other buttons. Now, the build that I gave you is not actually the preferred M+ build. There is a build that drops 2 Apex points in favor of Sundering points for more AoE damage. Sundering is a redesign of Primordial Wave of the past. It is a 30-second cooldown that you press and it gives you a haste buff and 5 Maelstrom. After pressing it, it becomes a single-use empowered spender called Primordial Storm, which you can use as soon as you hit 10 Maelstrom, even in Ascendance. The best way to use Sundering is to press it right before your Ascendance and then every 30 seconds afterwards. The cooldowns of Stormbringer in this build are simple. You have a 2-minute Ascendance and 30-second Sundering. One thing that could happen is that you end up delaying these Sunderings by a few seconds every time, and your 4th Sundering comes up at like 1:45, where your Ascendance is 15 seconds off. You do not want to delay Ascendance. It is too much damage loss to delay Ascendance unless you were already planning on saving it for the next pull. What I am saying is that if you have to choose between delaying Ascendance or delaying Sundering, choose to delay Sundering. Also, another advanced thing of the past is Tempest pooling. In War Within, it was absolutely mandatory to start every pull with 2 Tempests saved up, but now it is not important at all. I would still recommend at the end of a pull, holding onto a Tempest and using it on the next pull. You would do this by spending on Chain Lightning exclusively, even on one mob. Now that is it for Stormbringer. Now I will talk about Totemic, which is a Lava Lash centric build that revolves around a 1-minute burst. These are the standard Totemic talents for most content. The main thing with Totemic is the Hot Hands passive, which greatly increases the damage and reduces the cooldown of Lava Lash. Hot Hands is a random proc from auto attacks, but we also have a way to guarantee it every minute. Inside Hot Hands, you press Lava Lash at the highest priority every 2nd or 3rd global. Spenders now have an interaction with Hot Hands where they reduce the cooldown of Lava Lash and extend the duration of Hot Hands. You can potentially extend a Hot Hands window up to 30 or so seconds. There are 2 sequences you can do in Hot Hands. You either press Lava Lash and then 2 builders and then another Lava Lash, or you press Lava Lash and then 1 spender and then another Lava Lash. You can also spend in this edge case after pressing 1 builder. So the priority ends up looking like this. Lava Lash is top priority whenever it is up in Hot Hands. After pressing this Lava Lash, you should spend if you can. You can elect to not spend and instead press 2 Crash Lightnings in succession if you get an Apex proc. And if you don't have Maelstrom or Crash Lightning up, then you should press Storm Strike. Outside of Hot Hands, you would still follow this priority, however Crash Lightning would be more important than spending. Now Totemic is a very cooldown oriented tree, so we need to learn how to tie this into our cooldowns. Surging Totem is the flagship button of the tree. It is now a 1-minute cooldown that pulses damage. It does extra damage every time you Lava Lash, and it gives you a guaranteed Hot Hands. If you are someone who freaks out about the positioning of the totem, don't worry, you don't have to babysit it. Just get this macro. The macro will not cast the totem, but when it is active, it will use the secondary ability to automatically relocate the totem to you every 6 seconds, effectively keeping full totem uptime with no thought. The reason that we get a guaranteed Hot Hands is because of the Whirling Motes capstone. Last expansion, these were a bit more interactive, but now we can essentially ignore Air Mote and Earth Mote as they are handled passively in the way we do our opener. I shall also talk about Sundering again. Sundering is what Primordial Wave used to be. It is a 30-second cooldown that gives haste and generates Maelstrom, and turns into a single-use empowered spender called Primordial Storm. The notable thing about Primordial Storm in Totemic is that its damage is very buffed by our Doomwinds cooldown. Now Doomwinds is a 1-minute cooldown that does a lot more than it used to. Totemic has access to static accumulation and Thoriums, meaning Doomwinds constantly generates Maelstrom, and our Storm Strikes and Crash Lightnings in Doomwinds also cast a spender. Doomwinds is off GCD as well, so we can use it between globals. But we do not macro Doomwinds into Totem because we want to use it several globals after the Totem. Now this is what a proper Totemic opener would look like. As we walk in, we use Voltaic Blaze to make sure Flame Shock is on the target. We use our Totem, we use Sundering to give us haste. We use our first Lava Lash, which will activate Hot Hands, and now we use our off GCD Doomwinds into a Crash Lightning. If you don't have Crash Lightning up, just use Storm Strike here. This opener allows us to use all 3 motes within the first 3 globals of our totem. Now because we have Thoriums, the Crash Lightning we just used uses a spender as well, which gives us Lava Lash back, so we press Lava Lash again. And now we should be at 10 Maelstrom and we will press Primordial Storm. After that, we go into a loop where we press Lava Lash into either Crash Lightning or Storm Strike until Doomwinds ends. If all is done correctly, you should still have several seconds of Hot Hands left and you should execute the standard priority from earlier in the video. Now a question you might have is how does this actually translate to AoE damage? A lot of Totemic's damage comes from Wind Fury. Wind Fury is an effect that is procced on every attack that hits an enemy, and because of a talent in the Totemic tree, these Wind Furies proc an AoE Flame Tongue attack, so they do exponential damage with number of targets, but it is square rooted so it doesn't scale beyond reason. Now the usage of cooldowns in Totemic is simple. You have a 1-minute totem and Doomwinds that you always use together paired with a Sundering. 30 seconds after, you should press a Sundering again with no other cooldown. In the event that this 30-second Sundering is delayed, I recommend just holding it. If you have to choose between holding Totem or holding Sundering, you want to hold Sundering because all your damage is in the Totem window. If you are between packs in M+ when this Sundering comes up, I recommend just pressing the Sundering on air and using the Primordial Storm at the start of the pack. Also, something very important to note is that you have to be hitting a target with Flame Shock. Ashen Catalyst reduces the cooldown of Lava Lash only if your target has Flame Shock. So if you're hitting a non-Flame Shock target, you will have a longer than normal cooldown of Lava Lash. So that is it for the Totemic guide. I have have a few other things to go over for both trees. These are things that once mattered and no longer matter. Frost Shock has no damage modifiers, it is purely for a slow. Feral Spirits are now a complete passive and they are a relatively minor damage buff, you can ignore them. Arc Discharge is fully automatically consumed by a talent called Ride the Lightning, and Ride the Lightning also automatically spreads lightning rods. Lashing Flames is essentially fully passive on all targets. And you can't track Thorum's priming anymore, and you shouldn't. It is automatically primed from Tempest and Primordial Storm. There is no real situation where you can be incorrectly primed. If you are setting up the Cooldown Manager, this is what mine looks like. I use the add-on Arc UI to turn my Maelstrom into a bar. Now, I won't go too much into gear, but I have some things to say. Puzzle Box is looking like our best trinket. This is a 2-minute unused trinket with a cast time. You should use it before the Sundering, before Ascendance. And in Totemic, you should use it before your Totem, or before your Sundering after your Totem. The stats you are going for will be Haste and Mastery in both trees, but primary stat is very good this expansion, so prioritize primary over secondary wherever possible. I recommend simming your character on raid bots if you have any concerns beyond this. I won't give any BIS gear lists because that is something that is uncertain and changes for each player. Now, this guide was made at the start of the season. WoW is an evolving game, so people might discover new talent builds or playstyles in the future. After the season starts, I recommend looking at Warcraft Log's rankings to get the talents used on individual bosses or dungeons. And also a note, I have made this guide without mentioning the tuning of Enhancement Shaman. I will leave a pinned comment stating the balance between the two hero trees.